Well, like most disasters, the Moore tornado became national news. But after the national news crews left, a group of local filmmakers stayed behind to tell the story of recovery in a film called Where Was God? The documentary, directed, produced, edited, and filmed in Oklahoma, follows the stories of survivors, parents, children, first responders, and volunteers who recount the timeline of the destruction and share the devastating yet miraculous events that changed their lives forever.
And you see, it's a violent tornado. This is a tornado emergency. Operators, my God, get below ground if at all possible.
I've seen tornadoes that big, and I know what size of a tornado that people start dying in, and this was it.
And about the time we think we know something, there's always a surprise. We find out how little we do know.
We knew there were children missing. Well, when you have children missing in rubble, you know it's not going to be good news.
I'm thinking my son's in that school.
They were terrified. They didn't know if they were going to be able to see the light of day ever again.
My dad was holding the building. When he heard that everybody had gone out of the building, he took his last breath. But he didn't forget to tell us that he loved us.
After a private screening, I sat down with the film's producer, Stephen Earp, to talk about the faith that drove him to tell these stories.
Well, first, when the storm hit, all of us were thrust into being disaster relief workers, providing food, helping people shovel through their lots. And after about 2 or 3 weeks of it, a friend approached me who is a Christian filmmaker. His name was Chris Forbes, and he had an idea. Hey, what would it look like if we were to follow people for 3, 6, 9, 12 months, and follow them, with a series of interviews? And what does recovery look like for them? Not just the physical recovery that that you can see, the rebuilding of houses and whatnot, but how does one emotionally recover, or how does one spiritually recover from experiencing tragedy? And even the question, what does a tragedy do to your faith? And these are questions, and we thought, well, let's just start talking to people. We talked to hundreds and hundreds of people last summer. We were already involved in disaster relief deeply, as every church in Moore was. And we started, there were just so many stories of hope and smiles in the midst of struggles, and faith and hope and overcoming, and we just felt like we need to tell some of these stories in a bigger way. So,
the name of your film is Where Was God?
Right.
And I think you probably have struck the one question that most anyone would ask in such a tragedy.
Yeah, I think it's a common question, and actually I think the most common question I get from people who are people of faith and also people who are skeptics is the question, why? Why does God allow difficult things to happen? And that's a common question. And I would say, as a pastor, we cannot presume to know the mind of God, and we would not want to be so arrogant to try to answer the question why. I just don't think we can answer that question. But what I do think we can do is reflect on the question, where was God? And what we've done with this film is, through the first-person testimonies of people, the film is not scripted in any way. These are just first-person testimonies of how, even in the darkest times, these people, these families, feel as if they encountered God in some significant way. And in every story, there's a handful of families, as you know, in the film. In every story, they experienced some sort of inner transformation in the process of walking through tragedy.
I went back to where they were digging the kids out. They kept waiting and they kept waiting. And finally, the first responders told us that they taped off the area, told us that we had to, leave that area. So I found a hot water tank sitting out behind the school. And I went and sat down on it.
just knowing that I've got Mike deputies down there dealing with these children that have passed, and that I've got these parents out there that are experiencing the greatest horror that they could ever imagine. And that kind of grips you and makes you want to do something else. It makes you want to do more. It makes you want to make sure everybody's okay, and you know you can't make that happen.
That was the longest night
of my life.
That was a living hell.
That's what I would say. You know, where was God during the darkest times? You know, we all experience death. We all experience sickness. We all experience suffering and tragedies. It can be an illness, or it can be the loss of a relationship, or divorce or bankruptcy, whatever it is. And so it's a common question that we have. And the big idea behind the film, what we see in the testimonies of these people, is during life's storms, God is always near. God is still present, even in the dark times. We can learn from those times, we can grow, we can develop.
The closer I got, of course, there was houses standing as I'm running through the neighborhood. And when I made the last corner and I saw, and it was just leveled. And of course, I'm just running and running and running. And when I make the final corner right there at Plaza Towers, and I look down the street, and her and the kids were standing there in the street. I said, we're good. Everything's gonna be just fine.
I am really drawn to people who go through a very difficult time in life. Someone walks through a tragedy and they still love people and trust God. I am drawn to these. I am drawn to them. There's something of spiritual depth and emotional richness that people can pick up from a struggle that may not be able to be picked up any other way.
I would use the word wisdom.
I think I would agree. That's a great word for it. It's the life experience, agreed.
You have said that you did this film for Moore. You're from Moore.
Sure.
You pastor here in Moore. You said you've done this film for Moore. And you've hit on it a little bit, but what other lessons can anyone that sees this film across the country take away from this film?
Here's what I think. The film is really not about the Moore tornado. The film is about the storms of life. And every family in the film walked through some struggle. In the film, topics of suicide, the loss of children, substance abuse, a number of different life storms are addressed. And in each case, the individuals, they experienced hope and faith and overcoming. So I believe anybody that sees the film can connect with at least somebody in the film and get some hope. When someone watches this, I believe if someone watches this and they're going through a hard time, they can identify with someone that is, chronicled in the film and say, you know what, if that young lady can go through that, then I can get through what I'm going through.
Talking to these survivors, how has it changed you?
I am deeply moved by just the hearts of people to encounter hardship and overcome. It changes me and it impacts me deeply, and it's obviously hard for me to talk about even now. But I have a real sense, when someone's walking through a difficult time, I can feel that a little bit. And so for me, it has strengthened my own faith. And I think also connecting with someone's pain. The Scripture tells us that the Lord is near to the brokenhearted. And so my feeling is that when I'm close to someone who's suffering, that I'm also closer to the heart of God because of that. And so that's what I really think. Grit is what, you use the word wisdom. Grit might be another way to say it. I mean, to what extent can someone encounter a difficulty and recover? You know, how quickly can we recover or rebound? Can we still have a positive outlook on life? And so when I encounter people that have experienced some of the most dark types of loss that I can't even fathom, the loss of a child, to me, it impacts me at the deepest levels. It makes me want to pursue God more. It causes me to have more compassion. I want to reach out. And so I've been deeply impacted by this. I am not the same person that I was 12 months ago. I'm definitely more compassionate. I'm definitely more understanding. So yeah, I'm transformed as a result of this.
One of my own personal frustrations, this is going to come out here, is people that say, well, the old Islamic thing, inshallah, God's will, that just happens, and I don't think it is God's will, Where I'm trying to get is, what responsibility do we have as people of just doing the right thing?
I think it's a great question. And certainly I believe God put us on this earth to be stewards of the earth, and He makes us responsible for our lives. So we certainly want to work to make changes and to grow, and I think it would be irresponsible for us to just throw up our hands and say whatever happens is going to happen. We want to take responsibility, but at the same time, let's take action, but let's trust God at the same time. And those might seem like they're opposing things, and perhaps there is some tension between me taking responsibility and me trusting God. But I think that tension is supposed to be there. I think, so if you ask me, should we take more responsibility to prevent tragedies? Yes. Should we trust God even in the face of tragedies? Yes.
A final question. Where do you go from here with this film?
It is going to depend, to use a phrase that maybe not everybody likes, it's going to depend on what God does with it. Not to be overly spiritual, but reality is we don't know what's going to happen next. My heart is to bring hope and healing to the city of Moore. So we hope that everybody in Moore watches this. I do believe it can have a far more broad impact than just Moore. And if doors open for that to happen, then we're going to step through those doors. If they don't, then we'll keep doing what we're doing now. Putting the film on DVD, we could eventually love to get it in every household in the area. So right now, people can go online right now and, they can host screenings in different states. But that's not the same as, having theaters just open up to share the film. So I don't know, but I hope that it will have just as broad of an impact as it possibly can have.
Well, it's certainly a moving, important piece of film, and congratulations for having done it.
Thank you so much. And I greatly appreciate your time. Thanks for doing this. It's an honor to be with you.
Where Was God? Stories of Hope After the Storm is screening for 1 week at the Warren Theater and More, while additional showings are available throughout the country via the documentary's website.